Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So today is definitely going to be an interesting day for sure. The energy level is probably going to be through the roof. I'm just gonna go to this man's nickname. Like I literally, when I first met him on a chat, and I looked at a couple of his pictures, and I was like, I can call him the brolic boss, the swole boss, the muscle boss, the fit boss, the body rock boss. And I decided to kind of go on an old school terminology from New York. He is now and forever will be known as the Diesel Boss. So I want you to kind of tell our audience a little bit more about you and what would you like to talk about today?
Yeah, to bring it way back, I wasn't always the diesel boss. I may have felt like that inside, one day wanting to get there, but I started my journey very skinny. I was dealing with anxiety and depression. This is back in, right when I had started college. And I found fitness, and fitness really had saved my life. In a lot of different ways. First off, mentally, you want to get into the gym for a lot of different reasons, whether that be, getting more attention and getting swole and stuff like that. But I really, the positive attributes that came from it were so much larger than just the aesthetic. It was really about, how I was feeling and my confidence raising, really killing that depression and killing that anxiety. I fell in love with it, man. And I've dedicated my life to just helping as many people feel that way as possible.
Cool. So, I think it's definitely interesting that you started off like you talk about your journey at being a young kid, roughly like around 19. And it was funny because I seen a picture of you and it was like you had like a crew cut and you looked like you was like maybe 85 pounds soaking
Yeah.
wet, right? So I want to kind of just talk about like that journey from going to being that light to where you are right now. And again, you introduced yourself, but you forgot your motto. You forgot to smile and flex.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I usually do that right at the end because I got to get all the content in first and then we flex and smile at the end.
Okay.
The lead up, like a lot of people are like, we all have a story. We've all gone through something in our lives that kind of helped shape us one way or another. And I came to a pivotal point in my life around the age of 18. After I had left the house, I had gone to college, and prior years leading up to that, we just went through a lot of struggle. There was a lot of pain. There was a lot of, and I just wanted a different life than I had experienced and I had seen. And I know that resonates with a lot of people that are going through life now, or young or old. And I said, the only way to make change is to actually make change. And so I went in and did the things that I could do controllable wise. And that was really getting into the gym and starting to work out. And I'm not even lying, like within weeks, I started feeling better. And I was like, what is going on? This connection between eating a little bit healthier, starting to work out, and ultimately that became not only my livelihood and my career, it ended up being, how I met my wife. My faith got a lot stronger. There was so many connections that happened because of that choice that I made when I was 18, that commitment to a lifestyle that really was quite abnormal for a majority of the population. And I just engulfed myself in it. And I was like, hey, if I can feel like this after everything I went through, I want to teach everybody that I come in contact with the rest of my life this same thing, so that they can wake up every single day happy and healthy and strong and just more prepared for the curveballs that happen in life.
I think it's definitely a fascinating philosophy of like how you evolve. Because again, there's a lot of fit people out there, right? There's a lot of people that have gyms. There's a lot of people that are on Instagram flexing and everything else. But you not only do you have bragging rights, you're not doing it for that reason. But I want to kind of brag on you for a minute here. Obviously you were like the world champion at one time, right? You were on the cover of Iron Man Fitness. So I want you to kind of talk about like going from being someone that was trying to figure out who he was and build up your confidence to being on cover of magazines. Like that's night and day difference.
Yeah, that was really a 5-year period. And I went the 5-year plan in college for a lot of different reasons. So what had happened is I was going through college and I really still didn't know what I wanted to do. But I ended up getting a marketing degree, a bachelor's in marketing, and I had graduated college. So I had transformed my body from this 138-pound kid to about 175, 180 pounds by the time I got out of college. Like I was dedicated. And what I mean by dedicated is like me and my boys would go out to the bar or to the club, but my best friend knew that at 12 o'clock we would have to roll out. I didn't drink alcohol, none of that. And I was like, I gotta get back home because I gotta get enough hours to wake up in the morning and work out. And that was like how I lived. And I've lived that way for so long because it gave me my life back. It became a part of my identity. It became a part of my DNA. And then as I started engulfing myself in that more, these opportunities started to arise. So I graduated college and I went and got a real job. I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to wake up and do that job. I wanted to wake up and help people. So I like literally quit. My family was like, what are you doing, man? Like you spent all this money on college and now you're going to go be a personal trainer and making $15 an hour. And I was like, you know what? Like I'll figure out the money. I got to wake up and do what I love doing and what I really feel passionate towards doing. And I was in a YMCA, and this is how it happened. I was in a YMCA, and this guy comes up to me that's still my friend today, one of my closest friends, and he said, hey man, like I see you, you're so disciplined, you're so dedicated, you need to be a fitness model. Now we're in Kansas City. This is like 2002, 2003, and like I didn't know what a fitness model was. Like there was barbecue and cheese football in Kansas City. Like it's not a fitness city. And so, man, he said that one line and I was like, dude, I'm going to be a fitness model and I'm going to be on covers of magazines. And I like literally just penetrated that in my mind. And I was like, I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to do it. And so I dedicated myself even more to get my body to where it needed to be. And then ultimately I used the power of social media marketing through MySpace way back in the day in MySpace days and using this platform to build a gigantic following. I think I had about 150, 170,000 followers on MySpace. And I was using it to essentially get myself connected to LA, New York, Miami, the places where these photographers that were shooting for the magazines were. And in 2004, I got a big break. I got casted for a reality show in LA that was called Manhunt with Carmen Electra. It was like America's Next Top Model for men. That then gave me the first opportunity to shoot for the cover of a fitness magazine. And I did all that within like a 2.5-year period of time. I literally locked in it and was like, I'm going to make this happen. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a fitness model. And then fast forward about 10 years, I've been in over 120 magazines, fitness covers and magazines and TV. I did all this stuff. And at the same time, so that's my personal, at the same time, I was building this fitness transformation model in my mind of like taking people through the same transformation I took myself through. And that's how Hitch Fit was born in 2009. But I was utilizing it on MySpace back in 2006. So I ended up becoming one of the first online personal trainers in the world too. And it kind of happened by accident. So I was kind of working on two things at the same time. And what I'll tell people when it comes to success is I got a lot of no's, way more no's than I did yeses. But I just like my skin was thick and I was like, man, I am going to get to this goal. That dude, David, that told me you need to be a fitness model, like I'm going to be a fitness model. And, you know, fast forward, it helped me get to the place I am now.
I think, you know, you brought up a particular year, 2004. So I want to talk about 1 year after when you were at your peak, at your prime, 2005. A ladder falls in the road while you're driving. You end up in this ridiculous car accident. So those that don't know, obviously you've written a book. Chapter 2 kind of talks about all the details of what happened during that accident and how like the depression came back in. And I think you even made a statement saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, like you were looking at yourself in the mirror at your prime and you were seeing yourself deflate, like going back to that 19-year-old kid. So I want you to kind of talk about like how do you rise and then you're on the top of the mountain and then you get that reality check, you get deflated, and then now you're trying to figure out what's your next steps.
That was one of the most challenging points of my life outside of early childhood into my teens, because I was literally at the peak of my career when that happened. I was heading to Tampa for a job. Like I was at the peak of my career. We have this freakish accident. I'm laid out from the gym for a year. I couldn't personal train. I'm not being able to pick up dumbbells. There's a lot of different stuff there. I had to go take jobs that were not a part of my identity to get through and pay the bills. It was very challenging. And because of those jobs, I found myself making choices that were very unlike me, being in the clubs, being in the bars, but actually drinking some and whatnot. And that was never me, you know, and I was never a big drinker, but any drinks for me was a lot. And I'll tell you what, like I had gone through a year and I was feeling depressed. I started feeling and identifying myself as that 18-year-old kid again. It came back. Not only was my physique changing, but you know, I knew at that particular point, I needed to work on the internal far more than I did even the aesthetic, because I was so focused on getting a specific look to get these jobs and do the things that I needed to do to excel. But internal, the foundation wasn't strong enough yet. And that really helped catapult me to a much stronger foundation later. So fast forward about a year, and this girl from LA ends up messaging me and she's like, Micah, dude, congrats on that cover of the Muscle and Body. It's in all the GNCs in the nation. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? I shot that picture with Alex Ardenti and Jennifer Nicole Lee like 2 years before that. So they had held on to that. And in that period of time, Jennifer had like blown up. And so I happened to be the dude that was with her on the cover. And I knew at that particular point, like, I knew that the Lord was like, Micah, you need to get back on track. I remember looking in the mirror and I was, you know, I had lost like 30 pounds. Like I was like not in a good spot. And I was like, man, I'm going to get back. Not only am I going to get back, I'm going to get way better than I'd ever been even before that, because internally I needed to have a much stronger foundation so that I didn't have this weakness that essentially had set into me when I had this accident. And fast forward just a little bit of time, and man, the cover started coming in again and whatnot. We had muscle memory, so I was able to build that lean muscle back fairly quickly. It's always more difficult to get your body past the point it's been than to get back to a place you've been. And so I just went right back into the disciplines that I knew and the lifestyle I knew, got back into training and like took it full force.
Well, I mean, another thing to add on top of that, like to your point about, okay, well, now you're recovering, right? You're being featured on a cover, but I think it was Men's Workout magazine featured your actual accident as well. So
Yeah.
I mean, see, it was like a wake up call, but the cards were in alignment for you to kind of go to the next level, right? So I want you to kind of like talk about that for a little bit more about how does it feel to almost be at that point of absolute failure, and then you just keep on chugging, and then things start to work themselves out.
Well, if you look at your life, and this is going to relate to everyone, the most growth that we get are in times of massive storms. So, you know, you have a different level of fuel and fire under you when you're trying to grasp for that last breath. And that's where I was. And the thing that was so pivotal about that story for me is it taught me that I needed more healing, that I needed to get a stronger foundation, but I was also able to use such a tragic and difficult time in my life to then be much more relatable to the population by sharing my story and showing almost a failure, but being able to rise up, you know, that whole Rocky theme of like, no matter how many times you get knocked down, get back up type thing. Like it brought more grit and fortitude into my life because I had gone through that massive setback. And so now when I look at when challenges arrive or storms arrive, like I look at it now much, much differently, where I was terrified of it before. Now I'm like, dude, bring it on, because I know it's about to, you know, we're about to go through a growth stage. And every storm has been that way.
So let's talk about another storm that it's from a marketing standpoint, right? You're saying that you were on MySpace. For the younger listeners, MySpace is kind of pre-Facebook. That's the reason why Facebook kind of took over, right?
Yeah.
But it kind of went away. It kind of became more so for music and musicians. So like, how did you then take your 100,000+ individuals and kind of transfer from that platform into a whole nother space and grow to where you are currently right now on multiple different platforms?
Well, I think one of the most important things that you have to do is you have to be ahead of the game a little bit, and you have to be able to see it from a marketing standpoint. And so it's always about doing your best to be an early enter when you get into a different platform, and figuring out also, like how you did things on MySpace were very different from how you did things from Facebook. They were much closer than, let's say, Instagram versus Facebook, or LinkedIn versus Instagram or whatnot. But I still wanted to present the same sort of message, which was I was going to use my platform for good. I was going to showcase transformations and success stories. And then I was also going to I love storytelling, and in a lot of the messaging that I do, whether it be the things that I go through in life or someone else's story. And that's really the three main things that I, really focus on. And so when I translated that over to Facebook, the biggest challenge is in MySpace, the algorithms were wide open, which meant if somebody was on my page and I wrote a bulletin, everyone was forced to see that bulletin. Where in Facebook, the algorithms and whatnot are much, much different, where only, 10% or something or less are really seeing your posts. So you have to do a lot of different types of things to get traffic, whether that be more reels and stories and posts, and, or using text, or there's nerdy levels of it to be seen in that. And so the biggest challenge was just learning, specifically how to then, not only introduce myself into the Facebook world, but what the new language was that I was going to have to learn for that new platform.
So I think it was, fast forward a little bit, right? Because I like telling stories as well. So I kind of, with your story, I want to kind of like jump around. Like it's like you're flexing and then you're relaxing. You're flexing and you're relaxing, right?
Yeah.
So like this one is a major flex. You're in Hawaii and you get down on one knee. You meet your better half. Like you're awesome, but she makes you more awesome. So I want you to kind of like talk about that. Like, how did you even come across someone that was willing to take the journey with you, with spirituality, with working out, health, and the fact that you guys are always on top of a mountain? Like, I want you to talk about that. Like how did you find her?
Outside of my faith, it was the biggest blessing that I've ever been given into my life is my wife. And I always tell people, one of the biggest decision that you have to make in your life, and the most crucial decision you make in your life outside of faith, if you're a faith-driven person, is who you choose for a spouse and who that person is, because they can make you a better man and a great man, or absolutely destroy you one way or another. And that goes vice versa for men, women, whatnot. In 2008, me and Diana started communicating on MySpace. And when I tell you this, like, I was single at that point, she was too. And I was communicating with multiple girls. Like, I was a single guy, and, I had a lot going on and whatnot. Diana to me was always somebody, like, she was very professional, very classy. She was somebody that I really saw as a friend. And so we started building this bond as a friendship, and we're going to head out to Las Vegas to go to the Mr. Olympia, a huge fitness expo. And this is in 2008. And, we were like, hey, you're going too? Hey, let's take a picture together and just say hello. Man, we met, and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I felt she was beautiful, but it was something much deeper. Like, I felt it. I was like, almost like, this person for an extremely long time, that whole like love at first sight thing. And it was almost instant. Like, both of us were that way. And by the end of that weekend, we had spent a majority of the weekend together. 2 months later, she ended up moving to Kansas City. And I had never lived with another woman, any of that, other than, my mom. And we have been inseparable since that moment. And I mean, we run the businesses together. We do everything together. I was right on the verge of starting Hitch Fit. So when she came into the picture, she became the female of the actual business, which helped excel it tremendously as well. I was relatable to a lot of guys and had worked with a lot of females, but that female touch, is untouchable when it comes to the female base. And she had her own heart story of overcoming quite a bit, and she had achieved a tremendous amount in the fitness industry. We were walking and we were aligned so perfectly when it came to lifestyle, which was a non-negotiable for me, and faith, which was a non-negotiable for me. And so those two things came together, and we both like just essentially leveled up on everything that we had going on. I wanted to make her a better woman, and she wanted to make me a better man, and us as a couple be able to impact as many people as we could.
So 13 years later, and give her happy belated birthday for me, because she had a birthday a couple weeks ago, right?
You did. Yeah.
So I want you to kind of like talk about what you guys do for for her birthday, because it seems like every time her birthday comes around, you guys are kind of like on top of Plymouth Rock, some random place, whether it's Colorado or overseas. So I want to kind of talk about like what does it mean for you to conquer a mountain every single time you guys travel?
Yeah, so we go into what's called hiking season for us, and that happens to hit in the summertime. Our anniversary and then Diana's birthday is in August. So we went to Norway this year and hiked some of the most epic mountains in the world. Some of the just unbelievable. We did that for our anniversary, and then for her birthday, we went out to Colorado and hiked a mountain that we've actually hiked before. But we absolutely love. So our day to day, it's a lot of communication with people. It's a lot of grind. We work, 100 miles a minute, 7 days a week when we're back home. So when we get off the grid, we get off the grid. And it is me and her, that closeness. Most of the time, we can't even use our cell phones, and we are together. And it's a bond. And then, there's a symbolic nature to it too, from a biblical sense of climbing a mountain and being close, from a spiritual sense of me and her going. And, we do our prayer time and the stuff that means a lot to us when we go and do that. But it's also an extreme challenge. We've done hikes where we went all the way to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and all the way back up in one day, like 20 miles of hiking. And you're so beat up by the end. It's like, why would someone even do that? For us, it's like, we love being physical and challenges, but it also, it takes a lot of mental strength as well. And so we put ourselves in situations a lot that help grow all of those, ultimately for the same purpose that I've talked about this entire podcast, which is the stronger and better version that my wife and I can be, the better version we can be for the people that we get to work with and impact.
So I'm gonna make a comparison, right? And I think that you and your wife conquering these mountains kind of is a real life representation of your favorite book as a kid, right? So I want you to kind of think about Hind's Feet on High Places, right? So
man, you are paying attention, my friend.
All day, every day. So I just want to kind of like bring those two halves together. It's like you love that book as a kid, and now you and your wife are actually implementing a realistic version of what that book represents. So in that case, would that make you the shepherd?
Well, the shepherd is the Lord, and we're disciples of that. So when you're talking to it from a standpoint of your journey in life, and that's what essentially Hind's Feet on High Places is. It's about this individual. They narrate it towards a deer that essentially is carrying so much fear and so much worry and so much angst that this deer can never go to the places that she sees these the shepherds and the high places that we have in our lives. And so we're always stuck in the valleys where we're never able, we see it, but it's like, it's too scary to go that high. It's too, there's too much danger of doing that. We don't want to make change. We don't want to put ourselves at any sort of risk and whatnot. And the issue is we lose out on so much of life when we don't go experience the things that I think we were created to go experience. And so that's why it's so important for us. It's like, we can go get a cool car and a nice house and all this stuff, but those experiences isn't why we do these for birthdays. We very rarely buy each other gifts. And when we do, I'm just like, it's not on a special day. We don't, it's like Valentine's Day. We don't do stuff on Valentine's Day. What we go do is like, hey, what days do you want to go experience some really cool things? And that's kind of how we, we allocate our funds when it comes to spending. And it's those experiences together of going, seeing the most epic sunset together, or going going and scaling a mountain, or whitewater rafting, or whatever it may be, you know, laying in Tulum on a hammock together and then just enjoying life and listening to the ocean. Like, those are the things to me that when I'm older in my life, I look back and go, man, I did all the things. And we talk about that all the time. Like, that's one of my things. Of like, go out and do all the things. We get so wrapped up in life and all these, you know, all these stressors that hold us back. I'm like, man, just go do all the things. Like, you got to be financially responsible and all that. Don't get in crazy debt with it, but go and experience life.
So, I mean, with that, I mean, obviously you're talking about an experience between you and your better half, and then you guys even expanded on that. So now you're like, okay, we have our own personal experiences. Let's start bringing other people into this environment. And so that's kind of like the dawn of the retreats. And you guys have one coming up. I think it's next month on the 21st. So I want you to kind of talk about what are these retreats really doing? How are you really taking not only health and fitness and spirituality all together, encompassing in this one event? Like, how did you come up with that, and how has it been growing since you started it?
Yeah, so I'll go back a little bit. So within Hitch Fit, what we do is we go into people's lives, we transform their bodies through nutrition, wellness, lifestyle, workouts. Okay. What we wanted to do, though, is we wanted to create a retreat business that did the same, but we were able to pour into people in more of a group setting instead of just one-on-one. And by doing this, we would put them into environments that may be the most beautiful places they've ever been in the world. So they're experiencing this, almost just this like, wow, you know, every moment that they're awake, looking around in this absolute paradise. And at the same time, we're pouring ourselves into these people. Whether they have gone through trauma or whether they're, you know, trying to just level up in their life, whatever that may be. And what we've essentially done is infused fitness. So there's a health and fitness aspect to it, but it's not a bunch of bodybuilders and fitness models. That's not what it is. We just are explaining and teaching how eating healthier, more activity is going to help someone's life. And then, you know, we have a business aspect to it, of financial gain for people that are, you know, interested in that side of things. We have the faith aspect, foundationally, the faith aspect for people that are interested in leveling up that way. But we also have people that are non-believers. We don't push that onto people. It's just a part of the retreats. And so we do a lot of these things in a group setting where, you know, we this last one we did in Mexico, we took them down to Tulum Jungle Gym, and we rented out the whole gym for a couple hours. And man, I mean, it was like when you went into a toy store when you were a kid. That's what it was like with a whole bunch of adults, you know. And a lot of these people aren't like big fitness junkies, but they were just like, man, all these giant wooden dumbbells. And if you haven't seen Tulum Jungle Gym, it's wild, man. But it, you know, we want to go into these people's lives and impact them in a way that when they leave that retreat, they are changed. And it's crazy because in 4 or 5 days, it happens. We've seen it. We've seen it with, I mean, we had 90 people at the last retreat, and we had at least 3/4 of those people end up writing and making major change in their life after that retreat. I think you got to also remember that a lot of people may not have the circles that we have in life. And so this may be the greatest group of people that they've ever been around. And it's not just the mentors. Everyone that's coming is pouring into one another. It is just a really powerful thing. And so a little over a year ago, my wife and I partnered with a couple, Travis and Brittany Just, and we created essentially what Rockbody is now. They had created it initially. We came in and partnered. We had a really tragic situation happen this February where our partner Travis tragically died. And, you know, talk about a storm in life. That was a storm I had never navigated. Number one, a partner, but also like a best friend. And then we still got to carry on. Like, we still have to show up to this retreat and pour into people. But man, I was dying inside. And this is where the faith came in and got me through it, you know? And so, you know, these retreats are just so powerful. So we have the adventure retreat. So we have the Mexico retreats that I just talked about. This adventure retreat in September, man, we're taking them out to Asheville, North Carolina, the Blue Ridge Mountains. We're going to do a trip that's more like what me and my wife do. And so we're going to be hiking. We got zip lining, whitewater rafting, but still that same leveling up and really communicating and pouring into these people. So like a little bit different of a feel, a little bit more outdoor adventure. And then we have a big conference in January too, a speakers conference in Tampa. So.
Wow. So I mean that kind of goes to like one of your bylines, experiencing the change, the direction of your life, right? So I wanted to talk about on one side, you guys, I think there was an astronomical number, like 600,000 pounds lost collectively over your career of helping people lose weight. Like that's significant. Like, I mean, like how did you even get to the point to where, somebody may lose 1 pound, somebody may lose 10 pounds, but to get to 600,000 pounds lost, that's a long time putting in that work.
Yeah, I mean, when I say that we dedicated our lives to it, we did. But a lot of people dedicate their lives to it, but don't get the reach that we were able to get.
Mm.
And so because we were early into the market, and we were pioneers in the online space, it allowed me to grow it massively. So those 600,000 pounds were 81 countries of clients.
Mm.
That those were two to three gyms. I had 3 gyms at one point of doing transformation in Kansas City as well. And then my wife and I, I'm celebrating 25 years since committing my life to helping other people, and she's really close to that. So we're almost 50 years combined. And so those numbers like that to me is what success is. It's going in and going, you know what? Yeah, you got to make money and all of that. But I wanted to just impact as many people as I could every single day I woke up. Whatever opportunity that God brought me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to pour into this person, regardless if it's the person at the grocery store, a complete stranger. If I have the ability to give some knowledge or some encouragement, or a seed that they may end up, instilling in their life, then that's what we were going to do. And my wife and I just operate the exact same way when it comes to that.
So I would think right around that time, right? That I would say this is probably when you kind of fell, or maybe Randy found you, or you found Randy. So those that don't know Randy, he's the founder of Go Big to Give Big, which kind of leads us into giving back 10% of all your proceeds. And you guys have been doing it for a period of time in Haiti. So I want to kind of talk about when did you get in contact with Randy, and like how did that obviously change your business to where it is right now?
Well, yeah. So Randy and I were connected through one of my very good friends, one of my circle people, Marcus Collius, who was the owner of Magnum Nutraceuticals. Me and him have been friends for over a decade. And he's like, I had put this thing out. I was like, hey man, I want to do 50 podcasts by, October. Here's what I want to do. And Marcus wrote me and it's like, man, I just did a podcast with this Randy guy. You will love him and his mission. So we started talking and I'm like, man, I really like this dude. And we've gotten quite a bit closer. My wife has too with Randy and seen some just amazing things with him. And so we were very aligned with how we were giving with Randy. And so ultimately, over a decade ago, my wife was going on mission trips to Haiti. The first time she came back with, I think, 10 or 15 children, essentially, of like, hey, we're going to sponsor these. I'm feeling called to do that. The second time she went, she came back and she was like, she gets emotional every time that she tells this story, but she was feeling called that these were our children. We don't have any biological children ourselves, but these were our children. And so we ended up sponsoring the entire school, which at the time was about 100 kids. And, God was very clear to us that he would never let the oil run dry. We've had peaks and valleys within our business, tough months and months that were good, but those kids have always been taken care of since we committed to that. So that's been over a decade now. So essentially what that breaks down to is at least 15% of every dollar that's made out of the gyms before I pay any bill goes to Haiti. And that's essentially how that kind of flows as far as financial. I was able to see them multiple years ago and see the children in person in the school. And it was one of the most impacting life-changing experiences I've ever had. I mean, I got to play with them. We flexed, we smiled, we did all of that. And I saw such amazing joy in these little kids that honestly, they had nothing, I mean, very, very little, but they understood the connection between what we were trying to help with and them having an opportunity to go to school and have an opportunity for being able to provide for their family later in their life.
Think obviously like that's a hell of a way to run a business, but kind of talking to the family aspect, I think in your book you had dedicated paragraph number 2 to your dedication was to your mom, your dad, your uncles. So I want to kind of talk about like your sister's kids, right? So I mean, Sarah has 2 boys and yeah, she has, I think you have two girls or 2 boys and 1. So there's 3 kids she has total, right?
Yeah.
Ideally, with you being like the superhero uncle, right? Like you're
Yeah.
Captain America to them. And obviously we'll talk about that whole Captain America suit with Miss Wonder Woman here shortly, right? But I want you to kind of talk about like with you going to Haiti and doing all that, are you then kind of talking to your nieces and nephews and showing them like what they can do when they grow up, being that you don't have kids?
Yeah. So the one thing that we absolutely pour our lives into is the children's side of things. I want to touch base that we spent about 4 years with one child with big brothers and big sisters, and then we were part of a board and boys and girls club. We are absolutely dedicated to children. We love kiddos. When it comes to my family, Sarah is a stepsister, and she has 3 children now. We just recently went and saw one of her sons, Luke, go play baseball. He's real little, and it was a lot of fun. I don't get to see the kids a whole lot, but the opportunities that I do get to see them, man, I just try to pour in. One of the struggles that I had growing up, and a lot of other men have growing up, is I always yearned for that father figure. My father and I have a good relationship now, but because of differences between my mom and my dad early on, I didn't have a dad in the house, and it was a big struggle. So I always utilized, the opportunities I had to speak to young boys or even young girls and really, just lift them up, from a male mentor standpoint, because I knew how impacting that was for me as a child in the few men that came across my life that maybe were only there for a reason or a season, but made certain lines or certain experiences in my life that helped shape me later on. And so it's a very powerful thing to just be able to, yeah, I'm the superhero guy with big muscles, but for me, it was about getting into them and saying, hey, like you can go be anything that you want in your life if you work hard, work smart, and work honest. I mean, I wanted to instill some stuff that was even deeper than the muscles. I'm one of my wife's nieces right now. Her name is River, and she reached out to me about 3 months ago, and she's like, Micah, I really want to get in shape. And I told her, I said, she's about 13, 14. I told her, I said, hey, the only way this is going to work is if you listen to me and you got to follow. And if you don't, then, I'm not going to spend the time with this. And she said, I promise I'll dedicate. And every week she sends me like a little updated picture. And I said, how do you feel? We never talk about scale, weight, none of that. I said, how do you feel? And she goes, I feel absolutely amazing. I'm doing great in school. I feel so confident about myself, where she was struggling years past. That is the game-changing stuff. And so if I can be any sort of inspiration or encouragement into a child's life or an adult, I'll pour myself into them.
So I think kind of going back to what you said earlier about MySpace and having that marketing background and kind of just playing off of you think you differently, right? I mean, obviously you wouldn't be where you are if you didn't think that way. And I wanted you to kind of talk about an example that I think it was on your Facebook page. And you were saying that everyone has heard about the glass being half empty or half full.
Yeah.
So I would like you to recite what your answer was to that question.
Yeah, we've all heard that. You have a glass that's half empty, half full. Is the glass half empty or half full? And my whole mindset when it comes to a lot of things is I always look outside of the box. So instead of like looking at it like a majority of people would look at it, I simply pick the glass up and I drink all the water and the problem is solved. Like there's no question, there's no debate after that's done. There's no liquid left in the glass now, but it goes even deeper than that. So that water is gone. Now it's time to refill that glass. And so when I look at that, I look at how life kind of flows as well. And so as an entrepreneur, we have to think differently. You're not thinking, and my mind kind of always operated that way. I knew I wasn't a super manageable person as far as being in another type of job. I needed to run my own thing. And I went off kind of the beat of my own drum. My wife is very much like that as well. And so, I always looked at, I wasn't going to do the things that most everyone else was going to do. And it wasn't because, I want to be different. It was just because my mind was different. And I was just like, I had gone through so much bad stuff and so much hardship that I was like, that all I knew was that. So I was going to do everything different from what I had experienced. And that meant doing things differently than what I knew.
So I want you to kind of, you said that you talked to your 13-year-old niece. I want you to kind of think about a listener of this podcast, and let's just create this avatar, right? You got a marketing background. Let's say she's 18 years old, graduating from high school, and she's listening to this episode and she's seeing all the things that you've done with your wife and all the giving back. What words of wisdom, kind of like what you said with your niece about how does it make you feel, would you tell her that when the times get rough, how to overcome and keep moving forward?
Yeah. So, that in life, things are going to get rough. We have storms in life, especially the older we get and the more responsibilities we have and the more friendships we make, the relationships we make, like stuff happens all the time. What I would tell an individual, regardless of what age they were at, but that 18-year-old that's still like transitioning in life to becoming a woman or a man, like you have to control the controllables. And what I mean by that is every single day we have choices, and the choices that we make really dictate our future in a lot of ways. Now there's uncontrollable situations that happen in all of our lives. We got to figure out how to hit those curveballs sometimes and go through those storms. But when it comes to controllables, the things that I'm fueling my body with, the things I'm fueling my mind with, the circle of people that I put myself around, the environments that I go into, am I working out or not working out? What I'm trying to do is essentially build a body and a mind that's strong enough to go through those storms, because it's too often that we go into a storm and we are not prepared for it. And when you're not prepared for a storm, man, you drown. And that's where depression starts coming in and anxiety starts coming in. And then you end up turning to stuff like alcohol and drugs and the stuff that, hinders our life. And I've seen this over and over and over again. And, I would really focus on building a schedule and a structure that was going to help you become the most effective you could be in your life, not only for yourself or your faith, but also for that person at some point that you are going to end up committing your life with, if that's your husband or whatnot, like that's what I would prepare with. We could get into all the details of what they need to eat and workouts and stuff, but really the foundational stuff, so that when we build this house, we're building it on a solid foundation, not sand, when that storm comes through and then blows that house down.
So let's just keep going down this road. So she's taking heed to what you said. She's following those instructions. And let's say you want to give her some homework. Let's say it was a particular book that you read on your journey that made you who you are today. What book would that be for you to recommend to her?
Oh man, I could say quite a few. The first one I would read would be A Purpose-Driven Life, The Purpose-Driven Life, a fantastic book. And I would read it yearly because it has so many good nuggets. There's another one I would read that is specifically about perspective. Perspective is so huge because of the way that we look at things and perceive things in life. We kind of create sometimes just falsities in our mind When you look at the big picture, it's something much different. And that book would be the Noticer by Andy Andrews. That book is money. I love that one. The Noticer too, and Just Jones is a really good one. He had a couple there that were really strong. I mean, obviously, get into the Word. That's going to be very powerful for faith-driven person. Get your devotions in and whatnot. Yeah, those are the key ones that I'm really rolling with. But there's so many there's so many books out there that I was never a big reader, to be honest with you. I grew up playing a lot of video games. Like, I loved video games and whatnot. I still play today some, but there's importance in sitting down and getting into some really wise people and the way that they're looking at life and how they're tackling life. A lot of these people have a lot of wisdom and nuggets that go into your mind, and just implementing even some of those things into your life makes your life easier.
Wow. So the third item, she wants to get in contact with you. She wants to work with you. Where do you send them? Do you send them to social media, to your website, email?
Yeah, hitchfit.com would be where we send a majority of people that are wanting to work with us online. Emails, Micah LaCerte at gmail.com. Instagram is Mr. Hitch Fit. I mean, fortunately, I have one of those names that no one else has in the world. So Google and my name, we're all over the place, but those would be the main places that I communicate with. I do a lot of stuff on Facebook. That's, Facebook is a lot more, and a little bit of LinkedIn too, is a lot more of my storytelling type of approach to my platforms. If you want to get a better understanding of who we are, Facebook would be, probably the avenue to follow us through.
Gotcha. So I want to talk about, I think it was a YouTube video that you had, and it was some scrolling text. It was the original picture of you, like around 18, 19 years old. And you had compared yourself to, you wanted to look like Van Damme.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So do you think you're comparable to Van Damme at this point? Probably a little bit bigger than Van Damme now. Did you live up to it?
Yeah, I got bigger than Van Damme. When I was a kid, he just looked so huge comparative to where I was at. So I think, man, my mom took me to see Kickboxer in the movie theater, and it like changed my life. And the one scene that changed my life was when he had to kick the tree. And if you remember that particular scene, he's like, he's in so much excruciating pain. And essentially, his master's like, hey man, like, kick the tree. And he's like, I can't kick anymore. He's like, get your stuff and leave my house. And what he was doing was he was teaching this level of discipline, like his mind was stopping him. And then he ends up kicking down the tree, and I think it was such a, all those movies back in the day were kind of cheesy, but like it changed. As a 12-year-old, I was like, man, like, look at that discipline, look at that dedication, all this training to then end up beating Tong Po eventually, like that. Yeah. That to me, like those movies always I gravitated towards, and his physique specifically from an aesthetic standpoint, I looked at and I was like, I could achieve that physique. Where I looked at the Arnolds and the gigantic bodybuilders, and I was like, man, like there ain't nobody in my family that, that could have a physique anywhere near that. We weren't genetically gifted with just gigantic, So the Van Damme body was definitely something more, attainable. And I just liked him in movies too.
So I would say that that's definitely one of your achievements. I mean, the fact that you said it so long ago and then you actually overachieved that, I want you to kind of think about what is your most significant achievement to date currently?
Oh, I mean, the children in Haiti is the most impactful, most important thing to me. Being a fantastic husband is right up there in my faith. Being bold in that is also, from a fitness standpoint. I mean, winning a world championship was crazy. That was nuts. My very first cover, though, the one of Men's Workout, and this is back in 2004. That workout, or that magazine cover, absolutely changed my life. It was the first one. And I remember I didn't have hardly anything. I'm like super broke at this point. And I go into a 7-Eleven. I had to drive like 20 minutes. I heard it was out. I go into a 7-Eleven and I'm next to like Tom Cruise and Arnold or whatnot. And dude, there I am. And I'm like, I get like a couple copies. The people in the 7-Eleven are freaking out, like, you're on a cover of magazine, because it was just, nobody had done that in the Kansas City area. And I just remember thinking, like, all that work I put in and all those days that everybody was like, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. Why are you so disciplined? Whatnot. And I was like, boom. And that, to me, it wasn't a gigantic payday, but for me, it was a success in proving to myself that this vision that I had, and that's probably one of my biggest strengths, is using the power of visualization to become reality. I have this innate ability of like locking in at a discipline that a lot of people cannot lock in at to achieve a goal. And that has to do essentially with getting out of pain from earlier in my life. And so I've just associated it in a really positive way. So yeah, that was a major game changer. And the last thing that was probably the most impactful thing that I've ever done was in 2009. We had just started our business. We were living in an attic. We didn't have any money, but we had these big dreams. And I get a call from The Biggest Loser, which at the time was a huge show. And they're offering me money. They're offering me fame. And they wanted me to be a trainer on their show. And I talked to them for about an hour and explained to them why I couldn't be a trainer on their show. Because foundationally, I knew what they were doing was wrong. I knew that they were setting these people up for absolute failure. Even though we hadn't seen the stats yet, I knew enough about the body to know that they were ruining these folks, all for TV ratings. They called back a second time going, hey man, we'll flow with your flow. And I said, my flow is not going to get TV ratings. It just won't, because you need big numbers on the scale every single week. And I'm not going to make these people go through what you need them to go through to get the scale to say what it needs for your TV ratings. And my wife was right next to me and she's bawling. She's not bawling because I said no. She's or because I said no due to the success and fame. Yeah. She's bawling because I made the right choice. And we locked down and we kept our foundation the same all the way through since that point of putting people first. And we are where we are today because of it.
It kind of goes back to your superpower. And I think this one was either on Instagram or on Facebook. And you were saying that your superpower is brainwashing people into believing in themselves, but it's like you're doing it for yourself. Like, I mean, you're the first person on that agenda list, right? So that's definitely interesting. So I think something that you brought up probably about 20, 30 minutes ago was about those 50 podcasts.
Man, that was a big one, because like right now we are like, there is a lot going on in our lives. Like we are, I was telling my wife the other day, I said, man, this is the first time in my life where I feel like the water is overflowing the cup, like where we're going in every direction in multiple big projects at one time and trying to navigate just her and I. And so it has been a challenge, but it's amazing the amount of people I have met through these podcasts and the relationships that I've met through these podcasts and the speakers that we got through the podcasts that will be speaking at our conference. Randy is one of them. He is speaking on giving back and whatnot, and just new friendships. And I'm able to pour into people, but also give some of my connections and help people, level themselves up as well. So 50 is a tough challenge, but I mean, I'm going to keep going and hashing towards it. If it takes me a little bit longer than October, that's okay too. I'm going to get it done.
So just by you saying that, it sounds like you're on a football field, you're talking to the team, you're coaching them. So I want you to kind of talk about what is your infatuation with the colors that I'm wearing right now. Why don't you tell the audience, why am I wearing these colors right now?
Oh man. So I'm a gigantic Chiefs fan. Like I'm like monster Chiefs fan. I see Travis Kelce all the time because he lives in our neighborhood. And I mean, dude, like, I'll tell you this much, like, Kansas City, we just sucked for so long. And like, I was a fan, but I was like, I can't live like this. And then we get this dude, Patty Mahomes, and I'm like, and when I first saw him, I'm like, I think we literally just got Michael Jordan. Like in my mind, I'm like this kid is different. And I don't mean just his skill set. I mean, how he approaches everything, how he takes offense to anybody saying that he's not the greatest or the best, and how he then utilizes that to translate that to the field and just his in his growth. But even more importantly, we get to see what he does in this community in Kansas City. And he's made this in his home. He's invested in this city, and the things he does for children and the outreach he does for people that are in need. It's just a beautiful thing. So my wife was never a big like sports fan at all. She grew up in New England area from Vermont. So they, I guess, cheered for Brady and you know, during their times. But she is like all in. So, I mean, one of the most attractive things to me is we'll be in the gym and I hear her talking to a client about Chiefs football. And I'm like, man, like, you know, I hit a home run with this, because now she's like, she's all in. But yeah, we love Chiefs, man, and just all that it is. But at the same time, you know, I can't really allocate any more time other than the Chiefs. So I'm like a 365 Chiefs. I don't watch any other sports.
Wow. So, I mean, that's definitely interesting. I mean, you brought up your wife, and getting ready to close this out. I think you had made a statement about when she gives you a particular look, it means that you're going to have a fantastic day, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of contradicting to what you just said about the Chiefs. I think that look probably outweighs her talking about the Chiefs, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, anybody that's been married for a long time, especially us fellas that are married, like, we know sometimes without even our wives saying a word, what kind of day it's going to be or what kind of moment it's going to be, you know, because, and my wife's a little different. So my wife, her and I are both very, very assertive. We're very alpha driven when it comes to like getting stuff done. And she would definitely be a female diesel version of what it is that I do too, you know, and she lets everybody know too, like, I won 2 world championships. Mike only won 1, just so we know that. And like, my wife is, she's a boss, man. But I also love her independency, and, you know, she's a very independent woman, but also very nurturing to me and lifting me up. She's very compassionate and giving, but also very tough when it comes to being bold in the truth, especially in the word, but also when, you know, we're both that type of individual that, like, we're not going to tell you what you want to hear. We're going to tell you what you need to hear. And that is what a friend is, you know, even if it hurts a little bit, we'll hug you afterwards, but we got to like tell you the truth on what's going on there. And so my wife, like, yeah, I get one of those one looks, and I know, you know, I remember that post. I was like, I knew that day was going to be a good day. She was just like, you know, and so I probably got some extra smooches or something that day.
Very cool. So I set you up, so I don't want you to end up sleeping on the couch. So this next question, the reason why we said so much positivity about Diana is I want you to think about who you would like or love to spend 24 hours with, right? It could be someone that's dead, someone that's alive, someone that you've never met, someone from your past, historic, like it could be anyone besides your wife. Hence why we went down this road.
Yeah.
Who would it be and why?
I mean, there's probably, I mean, there's 2 people. I mean, this is a powerful one, and this is also kind of like a, man, like, this is game-changing life one, would be to spend time with Christ. I mean, that would be, you know, I feel like I am spend time with him, but in the presence of him like that would be absolute game-changing in a lot of different ways, you know. The other individual that I'm like a huge fan of is Henry Cavill. I really like Henry Cavill for a lot of different reasons. He's a Chiefs fan, number one, but he like, when I was a kid, my goal when I grew up was to be a superhero. And like, he's been able to not only be a superhero, but like Witcher, and he's been able to do all these cool roles that I always found fascinating. And he's also a gamer. I just really think, and he likes to work out. Like, I think in real life, we would actually be good friends because we just have a lot of common characteristics and whatnot. So he would be somebody that I would be really interested in meeting. And then there's a pastor named Craig Rochelle that runs a church called Life Church. And man, he's a very powerful speaker, but he's really raw about the things that he went through in life and how he overcame. I would like to, at some point in the future, spend some time with him.
Very cool. Very cool. So I could kind of see you, Wonder Woman and Superman, just kind of hanging out, rock climbing. I can see that.
Yeah.
So going into closing, I like to give whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of Boss Uncaged. So now you're the host. I'm your guest. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
Why did you start this podcast to begin with?
Multiple different reasons, but more so than anything else, it was kind of, I had a stroke and I faced death, and I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do next? And just like you, I found my girlfriend who became my wife. And in that transition, she had kind of posed it to me to say, hey, why don't you now take the risk of branding yourself the way you've been branding all these other companies for the past 18 years? So I took that at face value, made a full recovery. And then I started the podcast as kind of my way of branding myself and branding my company at the same time.
I always love stories of you hit essentially what was kind of a rock bottom, and you were able to get through it, and then you made a big splash afterwards. I love that, man. So, okay, you have one day that you and your wife can go do anything in the world together. What does that day look like?
Just 24 hours?
24 hours. You got one day. You don't have to talk about travel time. It can be anywhere. And what are you guys doing?
Yeah, we'll just travel all over the world. I mean, like that's kind of where we are at this point. Like, we got one more kid in high school, and the second that he graduates, we're probably gonna leave the country for a little bit, right? So ideally, we would probably be abroad collectively. I mean, we're getting ready to go to Europe in a couple of days, like literally tomorrow. So
nice. Where's the one place in the world you want to go visit that you haven't?
I'm actually heading there later on this month, Japan.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you're at the end of your life, and what do you want people to say about you, as far as like, if they were describing you at your celebration of life, what would you want to hear?
That's something that's pretty interesting, because I never really thought about it in that way. The only thing I would think about, and I tell my wife this all the time, is like, obviously I think I'm going to die before you. And so when I'm on my deathbed, by then technology should catch up to where you could upload who I am now into the cloud. Right. So at least I get to give my new digital self a high five and take everything that I've been doing and growing and developing and just let it live on. Because I mean, that's really why I'm doing this, is more so not just for our kids and our great grandkids, but ideally is for, you may have kids one day, or, your sister's kids may eventually hear this. It gives them an opportunity to kind of not only hear the voices of their family members in the past, but also take the nuances and the tips and tricks on how they can then become successful. And that's the only thing that I focus on day in and day out.
Oh man, that's great, man. So what are you working on past this Boss Uncaged podcast? What is your next big thing? Is there something on the future chart that you got up on your vision board that you're like, man, that's what I'm getting into next?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm real big into branding, kind of like, like marketers in branding is kind of like, until the companies that say sold, then I own the company. So anything I'm going to dive into is going to be underneath this umbrella. So, right this week, I kind of just released a beta launch for our live radio station. So I'm kind of working on that and scheduling that out, because I was like, hey, we have over 400 hours of content, and that's just the podcast. And there's so much other content out there that we can kind of facilitate. Well, we could have a live radio 24/7. What would that look like? In
Yeah.
addition to that, there's software that we're working on. We just got some numbers back earlier this week. So we're building out a platform to be able to help other people do what we're doing now at scale. So there's other bigger things that are coming down the pipeline, but they all fall under the ecosystem. I mean, like literally, we have a storefront right now that we sell all our merch online. We have an academy. We have all these different tentacles that are all co-branded underneath Boss Uncaged.
Man, that's great, man. All right, biggest accomplishment, and then I got one more question after that.
Okay. Biggest accomplishment. I would say, outside of family, it would definitely be being able to create the not necessarily empire, but create what I'm creating right now in roughly 3 years. Like from start to now, it was 3 years to where I was like, okay, I'm going to become a podcaster. What does that even mean? To where I'm at right now to say that, hey, we've recorded 400 shows, and at scale, 10 years from now, what is that really going to look like? That 400 is probably going to be well into the thousands, right? So, and every other thing that we're developing under the umbrella is also going to be well developed and well grown out. So I'm looking at it as an enterprise level situation.
Oh man, fantastic. I know you're going to grind too. I see you on the back end and I see everything that's going on there. So I got one question, but two questions in one. Favorite movie, favorite food.
So, favorite movie, if I had to it's timeless for me at this point in time, I would say Matrix, the first one. It's just like what it represents. And second to that would be Everything Everywhere All at the Same Time. Like those two movies, based upon when they came out and what they've done for the culture and what they represent to where we are right now, those are two epic movies 20 years apart.
Yeah.
Favorite food, I would say the weirdest thing possible, man. I love octopus. I'll eat a squirrel in a heartbeat.
Wow.
Yeah, just throw some fried insects at me. So, I mean, that's why I started the whole food group with some friends of mine. We've got a food group and we throw random stuff and we have potlucks and we have get togethers from the group. So food is just one of those things. Is like, why would I limit myself in a short period of time that we have here and just eat chicken?
Yeah, I got you, man. That's awesome, brother. Yeah, awesome answers. Have you seen my octopus teacher?
I have not. Oh yeah. Netflix. Yes, I did see.
Yes, man, that was a crazy documentary, man.
Yeah,
I didn't. Octopus, man, they're like alien, like crazy how smart those things are.
Well, since you brought up Netflix, I want to kind of talk about like real quick going into closing, the painkiller. You did a post about it. Was that related to when you had the car accident? Did you see some commonalities in that?
Yeah, I fortunately never got on any medications. Like I just dealt with pain. I was never into meds and doing prescriptions and stuff like that. But for me, when I make posts like that, it's very truth driven posts that also relate to other things. Like I know people are struggling with a lot of different things. And so a lot of the times I'll kind of curate something that was already created, which was the movie Painkillers, and then bring it into real life on how to overcome those things and those challenges that end up coming in your life. When something, you got to go through, sometimes you got to use medications for pain and whatnot, but we don't want that to end up being the reason that we end up losing our life too, because we become addicted to it. So you got to go into those things knowing that that's very temporary, and we're going to use every other way of the controllables that we have in our lives to heal our bodies.
Wow. I mean, with that, Micah, better known as the Diesel Boss, we definitely appreciate you. I mean, we went on definitely a roller coaster of your life today, and I think anyone that's listening to kind of see the ups and downs and much like how you were thinking about Van Damme, I'm sure there's someone thinking about becoming you down the road. So you're inspiring people in your journey, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you very much. And we can't end this podcast. I don't know when you're ending it, but we can't end it without flexing and smiling. So we got to do that at the end.
Well, go for it. I mean, go ahead and flex and smile, man.
You got to do it too. We do it together. I call people out. It doesn't matter. See this, and what people don't realize is flex and smile is not about big muscles. Flexing and smiling is something that's inside of you. What that means is you're translating and saying, hey man, I've overcome. I've gone through those challenges of that stroke. I'm doing better things in my life because I got off the ground after a rock bottom. That's what flex and smile means.
Fair enough.
All
Fair
right.
enough.
All right. Let's
Lead
flex
it.
and smile. Yeah, buddy. I love it, brother.
All right, man.